Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna and welcome to all the devotees online. Thank you very much for your kind presence. And we shall continue Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 2, Chapter 10, verses 18 to 30. Bhagavatam is the answer to all questions. Om Jnanatmivandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Vada Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute Tapta Kanchana Gourangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubheva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesa Sunyavadi Paschatya Satarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Sarva Shastra Piryusha Sarva Vedeka Satpala Sarva Siddhantaratnyada Sarva Lokai Pritprada Sarva Bhagavata Prana Srimad Bhagavato Prabhu Kalidwando Didaditya Shri Krishna Parivartita Srimad Bhagavatam, O nectar churned from the ocean of all Vedic scriptures, the most prominent transfer fruit of all the Vedas. O you enrich with the jewels of all spiritual philosophical conclusions. O you grant spiritual vision to all the people of the world. O life breath of the Vaishnava devotees. O Lord, you are the sun which has arisen to dispel the darkness of Kali Yuga. You are actually Lord Krishna who has returned amongst us. Paramananda Pataya, Prema Varshasharayate, Sarvada Sarvasevyaya, Shri Krishnaya Namastute, Srimad Bhagavatam. Offer respectful obeisance unto you. By reading one attains transcendental bliss. For your syllables ring pure love upon the reader. You are always to be served by everyone, for your incarnation of Lord Krishna. Madeka Bandho Mad Sangim Mad Guru Mad Mahadana Mad Nishtarak Mad Bhagya Madananda Namastute, Srimad Bhagavatam. O my only friend, O my companion, O my teacher, O my great wealth, O my deliverer, O my good fortune, O my bliss, offer respectful obeisance to you. Asadu sadhu tadaina tini chochataraka hanamun chakada chinmam premna ritkatayospura. O Srimad Bhagavatam, O give us saintliness to unsaintly, O uplifted the very fallen, please do not ever leave me. Please become manifest in my heart and my throat, accompanied by love of Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Janmadyasya Yatonvayartaratas Chartes Swabignaswara, Tene Brahma Hidaya Adikavaye Muyanti Yatsuraya, Tejo Varimridam Yata Vinimayo Yatrati Sargom Risha, Damna Svena Sadani Rastakokam Satyam Param Dhimahi. O my Lord Shri Krishna, Son of Vasudeva, O prevailing personality of Godhead, offer my respectful obeisance unto you. I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because the absolute truth and the primal cause of all causes of creation, sustenance, and destruction that manifest the universes. He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations, and is independent because there is no other cause beyond him. It is he only who first imparted Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahmaji, the original living being. By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed in illusion, as one is bewildered by illusory representation of water seen in fire, land seen on water. Only because of him the material universe is temporarily manifested by the reaction of the three modes of nature appear factual, although they are unreal. I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Shri Krishna, who is eternally existent in transcendental abode, which is forever free from illusory representation of the material world. I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth. Prayanalpaisha Sabya Kalavismin Yuge Jana Manda Sumana Matayo Manda Bhagyubhadrata. O learned one, in this iron age of Kali, many but short lives, that quarrelsome, lazy, misguided, unlucky, and above all, always disturbed. Narayana Namaskrityam Narochevam Narotamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayat. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisance unto the personality of Godhead Narayan, unto Nara Narayan Vishya, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Savai pumsa paradharma yato bhaktira dokshaja hituka pratiyata yatma suprasiddhati. The supreme occupation dharma for all humanity is that by which men can attain to loving devotional service unto the transcendent Lord. Such devotional service must be unmotivated and uninterrupted to completely satisfy the self. Vasudeva Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojita Jana Yatyusavai Ragyam Jnanam Chayadohitukam. By rendering devotional service unto the personal Godhead, Shri Krishna, one immediately acquires causes knowledge and detachment from the world. Padantidatta Tvavedas Tattvam Yajgnanam Advayam Brahmeti Paramatmeti Bhagavaniti Sabhyate. Learned transcendentalists who know the absolute truth called as non-dual substance Paraman Paramatma Bhagavan. Shri Shushoshadhanasya Vasudeva Kataruchi Syan Mahatsavaya Vipra Punyartirtha Nishevanat. O twice born sages, by serving those devotees completely free from all vice, great service done. By such service, one gains affinity for hearing the message of Vasudeva. Shranutam Swakata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Ryadanta Stoya Badrani Vidunoti Suritsatam. Shri Krishna, the person of Godhead, who is Paramatma, super soul in everyone's heart, and the benefactor, truthful devotee, cleanses desire for material enjoyment. From the heart of the devotees develop the urge to hear his messages, which are in themselves virtues when properly heard and chanted. Nastaprashu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatu Tamasloke Bhakti Bhaviti Nashtiki. By regular attendance in the class of the Bhagavatam and rendering of service to the pure devotees, all the disturbance of the heart is almost completely destroyed. And loving service under the person of Godhead, who is praised with tranquil songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Etavan Sankhya Yoga Bhyam Swadharmam Parinishtaya Janmalabha Param Para Pumsam Ante Narayana Smriti, the highest perfection of life, human life, achieved either by complete knowledge of matter and spirit, by practice of mystic powers, or by perfect discharge of occupational duties to remember the personal Godhead at the end of life. Akama Saravakama Va Makshakama Udariditi Vrena Bhakti Yogena Yajite Purusham Param. A person who has broader intelligence, where they be full of all material desires, without any material desires, desire and liberation, must by all means worship the Supreme Whole, the personality of Godhead. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We are continuing Srimad Bhagavatam based on the teachings of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, the founder Acharya of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Hare Krishna, and welcome again. If anybody has any feedback or remembrance of what you covered in the last section. Amavati Radhika Nalini Kanta Prabhu says, Hare Krishna, purport, Srimad Bhagavatam 2:9-12 purport. The Lord is the supreme enjoyer, and the living entities are meant to assist the Lord in his enjoyment and thus participate in the transcendental enjoyment of everyone. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is the cause of all causes. We should never say we are independent. Actually, we are fully, totally, and eternally dependent on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So the first point, the living entities are really part and parcel, truly part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. And because we are part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, our enjoyment is completely connected to the enjoyment of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We cannot enjoy independently of Krishna. We are trying, and that is our material life. Just like a fish is completely and totally dependent on the ocean. There is no fish in the history of creation. Or you could say there is no fish in the history of creations, kalpa after kalpa, millennium after millennium, that has survived outside the ocean. A fish means, if I had to tell you, think of a fish or things related to a fish. Ocean and fish go together. When I say fish, it means a fish in the ocean, or at least fish in water, like fish in the fish tank. There's water. A fish cannot exist independently outside of water. Similarly, the living entities were part and parcel of Krishna. Jiva Sarupoi, Krishna Nityadas. They cannot live independently of the Supreme Personality of God. Material life means we have lived or trying to live completely independent of the Supreme Lord. And therefore, if we look around, you'll see so much suffering, so much struggle for survival, so many challenges, issues. We just have to look around and we can understand the material nature, the material world is a place of suffering. Why? Because it is separated from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Similarly, our lives, if we do not bring the Supreme Lord into our life, if we do not align ourselves with the Supreme Personality of Godhead's desires, if we do not begin to serve God, serve the Supreme Lord, without doubt, without fail, guaranteed, it will be a life of suffering. So Srila Prabhupada's books are directing us to again revive our remembrance of this fact. This morning we were listening to Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada was making the point. We're not learning something new. We're not bringing something that's foreign. We are all servants of Krishna. We just forgotten. So the question is really about reviving, uncovering the dirt that is there. That is all. And that uncovering of dirt that is blocking our consciousness, that uncovering is totally dependent on ourselves. To what degree we want to uncover, and to what degree we purify our lives. That is totally dependent on our intensity. For example, let's say you want to get back into good health, like aerobic health. You want to be fit. You're able to, run a marathon. Now you have not practiced for 20 years. You have not exercised for 20 years. And now you need to get into shape. The timeline for you to get into shape is totally dependent on the time you put in to exercise. If you say, okay, I want to get in shape, I'll practice once a year. How many years do you think it'll take you to get into shape? One day a year of intense practice. And I'll spend, like 8 hours, doing different exercises, 8 hours a day. That's like really practically the whole days. Good intense workout. Once a year. All the years of your life. And even life after life, you carry on like that, it's going to you're not going to be in shape. Yeah, maybe hundreds. You're not going to be in shape. Even if you spend 1 million lifetimes doing that, why won't you be in shape if I'm spending 8 solid hours a year? Once a day. Why won't I be in shape? What's the issue there? I mean, I'm practicing 8 hours a day for 1 day for that year. What is the underlying issue there of why I will never ever be in shape? Even if I had to live 1 billion or trillion years. Too little time, not regular. Dosage, timing, all off. Frequency must be daily. So yes, I appreciate the response, but what's the issue? So I'm still trying to know, why won't I be fit even after a billion lifetimes of such a practice? No, I'm very sincere. I'm serious. 8 hours a day is I put in. You don't desire it? I want to be, I have a strong, I want to be, see, I'm serious about becoming healthy and fit. So it's in relation to the frequency. Why is there no result? You don't want to put the effort in? Okay, so let's look at this. The reason there is no result is I want to achieve an objective, but the challenge is that in this world, there are two frequencies. Hare Krishna Prabhu. It's because there is no consistency and you'll be disturbed in the slow progress. Okay, good. So let's analyze this, right? Because this is directly related to our life, our spiritual life. I want to be healthy. Implication, I'm not healthy. If I don't exercise regularly, I won't maintain good health. Because I want to be healthy, implication, I have not exercised regularly and therefore I'm not healthy. Now in this world, just like a rocket, the rocket can only go up or down. It can never stay in one place. Why? Because there's a law of gravity. So the law of gravity will keep pushing that rocket down. For the rocket to move up, it needs to constantly have its engines on so it can move up. Okay, is that clear? It's either going up or it's going down. As soon as I switch off the engine, I'm going down. As soon as you stop exercising, you're going down. Clear? So you're either moving up or you're moving down. There is no in between. You're either exercising and you're becoming fit or you're not. There's no in between. It's not like I can exercise 8 hours and then my muscles and everything will be fine-tuned and will stay like that until the next year. That's why you will never, ever be fit. Because for that one day, you are fine, you are tuning, you are exercising. The next day, you are declining and declining and declining and unfit because you're going down. You're not exercising. So for you to maintain good flexibility, health, etc., you need to keep exercising regularly. As soon as you stop, you're going down. Similarly, spiritual life. See, very often people think I can practice spiritual life once a week. So I go to church, temple, mosque once a week. The problem with that is if it's once a week, then what's happening the other 6 days? Are you switched off? Like completely in a zombie state until the next Sunday? No, you're active. Okay, active on what level? Is it active on a level of Krishna consciousness? You're remembering the Lord? Or are you've forgotten the Lord until the next Sunday? If that is the case, that is why we do not make advancement. That is why we struggle. So yes, consistency is key, but consistency is relative. Is it once a year? Is it once a month? Is it once a week? Is it once a day? Is it few times a day? Is it every hour? Is it every minute? Is it every second? Consistency is key. Krishna consciousness means I need to practice, I need to cultivate Krishna consciousness so that I can think of Krishna how long? How often? Please type in the chat. How often? How much do I cultivate so that I can think of Krishna how often? So that 24 hours a day, make it a little more practical. So yes, 24 hours, 24, there's obviously fractions of 24 hours, right? So not just 24 hours a day, but yes, every moment. Every moment. Because I could still do something every hour accumulating to 24 hours a day. But it's about every moment. All the time, always remember Krishna and never forget him. This is the objective. To always. Yes, we must think of Krishna all the time, every moment, every second. Now for that to be achieved, it means one has to be convinced that that's the goal. Because it's not easy. And the reason it's not easy to think of Krishna every moment is firstly, we too caught up. And our practice is inconsistent. Our practice of remembering Krishna may be only like 1 hour a day, 2 hours a day until the next day. Or once a week until the next week. You cannot achieve effective remembrance of Krishna in that way. Now, it's not that it's completely hopeless, and let's use the same example because we have to understand there is a difference. There's a vast difference. If you are practicing, if you're exercising once a year until the next year, so one time, once a day, 365 days, you will definitely not become healthy, even after 1 trillion births, lifetimes, because of the nature of that exercise. It's on the material platform. Whereas, if you had to go to the temple once a year on Janmashtami only, there is a vast difference between the two. Now, who can share what would be either an example, either an analogy, what would be the difference? Why are the two, even though I'm doing it once a day on Janmashtami, once a day exercising, these two are totally different. The one I'm saying you will never ever become healthy if you exercise once a day for 365 days for eternity. You'll never be fit. And the other I'm saying it is totally different. compared to the exercise. Even though you're putting the same time, once a year, I go and follow Janmashtami very diligently, spend the whole day at the temple. That will still deliver a result, whereas the other will not. Why? What is the difference? 1 plus 1 is equal to 1. Spiritually, never loss or diminution. Good. Yes. Temporary for material activity, there is no loss or diminution for spiritual activity. Good. Yes. That is the key difference. That whatever spiritual effort you put in never ever gets wasted. It's never ever lost. This is why the pure devotees will encourage you, whatever little you can do it. But hold on. It's not about doing the little. See? Yes, it's encouraging that whatever you can do, you do, but it's not about doing the little. It's about giving everything. But at least start somewhere. So we should be fully convinced that my destiny, my relationship with Krishna is completely dependent on my effort. Yes, I need Krishna's mercy, but it is my effort that I put in that will deliver the results. Mother Yashoda, she perspired in binding Krishna. So effort has to be there. Krishna's mercy is always there. Very often we want Krishna to reveal himself. Krishna, why are you not merciful? No, it's not Krishna's fault. It's your effort. It's your laziness. And why? Because we've been in this material world for billions of lifetimes. So the impurities that we've accrued is tremendous. Now, to what degree, to what intensity do you want to purify yourself of those impurities? Because those impurities are covering your consciousness. If you simply put the effort and the intensity in trying to purify your life through the process of devotional service, the rest will take care of itself. So that is in relation to how we can really enjoy in relation to Krishna. Simply purify our life completely. And one aspect of purifying our life is associating with the Bhagavatam. If we simply associate with the Bhagavatam, it's not different from Krishna. Not only does it sharpen our intelligence, but it also purifies our life. It purifies our heart. One reason, all right, let's ask you, what are the reasons and what are the reasons that the Bhagavatam purifies our life? What are the reasons that the Bhagavatam purifies our life? Why is it that the Bhagavatam can purify our life? What makes it so special that it can purify our life? Why is the Bhagavatam so special that it can purify our life? I hope you're typing. Shamanandru says it has to do with Krishna and the devotees. All right. So because Bhagavatam is all about Krishna, and the devotees, we get purified. We nonetheless association with Krishna and the Parampara, pure devotees. We are associating, we are hearing the glories of the pure devotees of the Lord. Amavatina Nikandas Amala Puran, giving us teachings, a way to learn. Srila Prabhupada's purport, his mercy and realization. So we are associating with Srila Prabhupada. Yes. And the Bhagavatam is Krishna. It's not different from Krishna. When we study the Bhagavatam sincerely, we are associating with Krishna. Yes. It is Krishna. Krishna appearing in the form of Grantaraj. Granta, in the form of a book. God in the form of a book. God in the form of the holy name. God in the form of prasad, in the form of food. God in the form of a deity. God in the form of a book is Bhagavatam. So therefore, simply by touching, simply by hearing, simply by reading, by associating, we will get purified. There is no doubt. And here's the wonderful thing. To the degree that you are sincere, to the degree that you are serious, to that degree the Bhagavatam reciprocates. The Bhagavatam knows when you are serious about associating with it. And therefore, the Bhagavatam will reveal and purify accordingly. Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, as you surrender unto me, I reward you accordingly. So therefore, even though multiple devotees will associate with the Bhagavatam and read, but the degree and intensity of purification will be relative, according to sincerity and effort. Like that story that I normally share of Lord Buddha. When Lord Buddha was being enthroned, everyone in the village who came to give different gifts, different valuable gifts, jewelry, wealth, gold, all different gifts would been offered, different incenses, etc. And one old lady, she noticed everybody going to the court and giving Buddha different gifts, and she was thinking, I also want to give something. But the only thing she had was a half-eaten pomegranate. So when she went to the court, it was noticed that all the people that were giving gifts, Buddha was showing his ministers, gesturing to his ministers to please accept the gift on his behalf. And in this way, they were accepted. The gifts were being honored and accepted. But when this old lady came and offered this half-eaten pomegranate, Buddha himself left his throne, came down, and personally accepted the half-eaten pomegranate. And everybody was shocked. Like, seriously? When I gave valuable pearls and gems and rubies, and you're getting your ministers to honor, and now you coming and accepting this half-eaten pomegranate? Can't be serious. No, that is serious. Why? Because you gave some emeralds and jewels and opulent necklaces. You gave me one necklace, you got 100 at home. Whereas she has only a half-eaten pomegranate. Her offering is everything. So the value of her sacrifice is far, far more than what you sacrificed. So like that, Krishna sees our sacrifice, and then Krishna responds and reciprocates with the intensity and the level of that sacrifice. So we are continuing. We are discussing the 10 subjects that are mentioned in a Mahapuran, especially Srimad Bhagavatam. Sarga, creation of the universe. Visarga, subcreation. Sthana, maintaining the planetary system. Poshanam, protection for devotees. Uti, the creative impetus of karma. Manvanta, the reign of Manu. Ishanukata, the science of God. Nirodha, annihilation. Mukti, liberation. And finally, Ashraya, the summum bonum. And all these subject matters that are discussed in the Srimad Bhagavatam, they are simply discussed. They are different topics with the same objective. And the objective is one and one only, to glorify the Ashraya, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. All these topics are there to inspire us, to purify us, to acquaint us, to direct us to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the ultimate Ashraya, the ultimate shelter. If any of these topics are separate from the Ashraya, they hold no value. When they're all connected to the Ashraya, now they have value. And each of these topics will mold our life in different ways so that we can connect, we can surrender, we can depend on Krishna. Text 17. Prayenak shipata should trade antara jayate vibho pipasato chaksatas cha pran mukham nirabidyate nipyata. The living force, being agitated by the Virat Purusha, generated hunger and thirst. And when he desired to drink and eat, the mouth opened. So now we are hearing about creation. And we're hearing how, in terms of initial sarga and visarga, in terms of creation, primary creation and secondary creation, how everything is created. And as we go through all the 10 subjects, we will see how they're all connected and related to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So every facet of creation is connected to the Supreme Lord. And now we are hearing how the creation of the activities of drinking, the activities of eating, they're not separate from the Supreme Lord. Because the Virat Rupa, the universal form of the Supreme Lord, desires to eat, desires to drink, these different functions and facilities manifest. Robert writes, the process by which all living beings in the womb of the mother develop their sense organs and sense perceptions appears to follow the same principle in the case of the Virat Purusha, the sum total of all living entities. Therefore, the supreme cause of all generations is not impersonal or without desire. The desires for all kinds of sense perception and sense organs exist in the Supreme, and thus they take place in the individual person. This desire is the nature of the Supreme Living Being, Supreme Living Being, the Absolute Truth. Because he has the sum total of all mouths. The individual living entities have mouths. Similarly, with all the other senses and sense organs, here the mouth is the symbolic representation of all sense organs, but the same principle applies to others also. We have desires and we have faculties. Why do we have desires and the faculties? Because they originally exist in the Supreme Lord. This is why the Bhagavatam is not presenting an impersonal absolute truth. God, the Supreme Absolute, the Ashraya, the Summum Bonum, cannot be impersonal. Impersonal means no form, no shape, no desire, but that is not the absolute truth. So when we're hearing about creation, we see that there's variegatedness, there's desire, and that is connected to the Virat Rupa. The Virat Rupa is a feature of the absolute, the feature of Ashraya, the feature of the supreme truth. Therefore, it's clear that there is no impersonalism in this aspect. It's clear that there is variegatedness. It's clear that there is desire. 18. Mukhatas talu nirbinam jiva tatropajayate tato nanaraso jagne jiva yayo digamyate. From the mouth, the palate becomes manifested, and thereupon the tongue was also generated. After this, all the different tastes came into existence, so that the tongue can relish them. This gradual process of evolution suggests the explanation of the controlling deities, Adideva, in this case, Varuna. The mouth becomes the resting place for the tongue, which tastes all different relishable juices, of which the controlling deity is Varuna. This suggests, therefore, that Varuna was also generated along with the development of the tongue. The tongue and the palate, being instrumental, are adibhutam, or forms of matter. But the functioning deity, who is a living entity, is Adideva, whereas the person undergoing the function is Adhyatma. Thus, the three categories are also explained as to their birth after the opening of the mouth of the Virat Purusha. The four principles mentioning this verse serve to explain the three main principles, namely Adhyatma, Adideva, and Adibhuta, as explained before. So here we see the examples Prabhupada is giving to explain these three facets or aspects: the Adhyatma, the Adideva, and Adibhuta. In the previous slide, you'll see from the Virat Rupa, we have the sense organs, which is the Adibhuta, the gross sense organs, Adibhuta. The subtle sense organs, Adhyatma, and then the sense Devata, which is Adideva. And then the Tan Matra, which is also the Adibhuta, the bodily activities. So all these different aspects manifest from the Virat Rupa. The presiding deity, the organ, the function of the organ, and that living entity that has all these faculties to then experience. And this happens with all the senses. So here we see creation is not an evolution process like Darwin is explaining. It is not that matter is evolving to another form of matter. No. But it is that from the supreme conscious being, there is evolution, there is manifestation. 19. Vivakshor mukato boomno vanir bag vyaritam tantayo jale chaitasya suchiram niroda samajayata. When the supreme desired to speak, speeches were vibrated from the mouth. Then the controlling deity fire was generated from the mouth. But when lying in the water, all these functions remained suspended. So now the Virat Rupa wants to speak, and as soon as the Virat Rupa wants to speak, manifestation happens, creation happens. So like that, systematically, as the Virat Rupa is desiring all faculties that we have, it manifests. This is creation. This is what you would call creation connected to personality. Creation coming from a personality, the supreme personality of Godhead. Prabhupada writes, the peculiarity of gradual development of the different senses is simultaneously supported by the controlling deities. It is to be understood, therefore, that the activities of sense organs are controlled by the will of the Supreme. The senses are, so to speak, offering a license for the conditioned souls who are to use them properly under the control of the controlling deity deputed by the Supreme Lord. So all our faculties are given to us with a license agreement. And if you use your senses according to the license agreement, you are benefited. If you use your senses against the license agreement, you get penalized. If you use your senses for the service of Krishna, you get rewarded. If you use it against Krishna's desire, you get punished. It is not your senses. You didn't create them. You were given to them by the Supreme Lord according to his creation. Prabhupada continues, one who violates such controlling regulations has to be punished. And what's the punishment? By degradation to a lower status of life. So if you see animals, the animals have been degraded. They have a lower status of life. Why? Because they misuse their senses. Okay. How about human beings? Human beings also is a lower form of life because they are higher beings like demigods. So we also have been degraded. Why? Because we also have misused the senses. You could say even the demigods are degraded because a higher form of life is in the spiritual world. Consider, for example, the tongue and its controlling deity, Varuna. The tongue is meant for eating, and men, animals, and birds each have their different tastes because of different licenses. The tastes of human beings and that of the swine are not on the same level. The controlling deity, however, awards or certifies a particular type of body when the particular living entity develops a taste in terms of the different modes of nature. If a human being develops taste without discrimination, as does the swine, then the controlling deity is certainly certified for the next term to award him the body of a swine. So Prabhupada is making the point, according to creation, in this case the tongue, there is license. And according to the different species, there is conditions attached to that license. So a swine can eat anything. A boar, a pig can eat anything. Because that license is given to that animal to eat anything. If a pig eats anything, it does not transgress the license. If a human being eats anything, it's transgression of a license. Now, ultimately, all our senses are meant for serving Krishna. But even within the material creation, there is elevation and degradation according to material licensing. So if a human being exploits and transgress, he can get license according to his desire. Ultimately, he needs to purify his tongue by eating Krishna Prasad and only eating Krishna Prasad. But if within the material sphere, there's also different licensing. The swine accepts any kind of foodstuff, including stool, and a human being who has developed such indiscriminate taste must be prepared for degraded life in his next life. Such a life is also God's grace, because the conditioned soul desired a body like that for perfect tasting a particular type of foodstuff. If a man gets a body of a swine, it must be considered the grace of the Lord, because the Lord awards their facility. After death, the next body is offered by superior control, not blindly. A human being, therefore, must be on his guard as to what sort of body he is going to have in the next life. Any irresponsible life of this indiscrimination is risky, and that is the declaration of all scriptures. So now here is how we are Prabhupada's connecting. We are talking about creation. We are talking about a part of creation, our tongue. From the tongue, creation of tongue, there is the presiding deity. There is the function. But all that is also connected to a law of licensing. Who makes the law? The supreme lawmaker. So see how we're going from creation of a tongue back to the Supreme Lord. And then Prabhupada's also connecting it, that you want to enjoy like a pig, you get a body of a pig. How? By the grace of God, the lawmaker. So from creation, from the desire to enjoy, from misusing, it's all coming back to the grace of God and to Krishna. Bruce says, Bryce says, Hare Krishna Prabhu. In this instance, is there any chance for transgressed species to be elevated again? And what are the circumstances? Yes. So let's consider the same example of a pig. So in India, especially if you go to Vrindavan, and you may go to some of the holy places, and they may, for example, sweep. They have, they don't have like a built up. In some villages, especially like in the rural areas, villages, they don't have built up sewage system like how we have. Our sewage, underground and pipes, and so in many of these holy places, they create a system where the sewage, they have like a tunnel that they dig like a hole on the sides, and then that becomes like the sewage system, and everything goes in there. Now they have boars that live in those sewage systems, and sometimes they facilitate that sewage system. So let's say if I'm eating prasad, certain remnants of the prasad goes into that sewage system. Great souls are walking in those pilgrimage places. When they sweep, the dust that has touched their feet, it goes into that sewage system. When these boars, swines as Prabhupada calls them, touch that sewage system, they're touching the dust, they're eating remnants. That means they get purified and they can get elevated. by seeing devotees, they get elevated. When they hear the holy name, chanting of the holy name, they get elevated. Like the Harinam party is going, right? And the animals are there. So these degraded animals, they get elevated. That's why Srila Haridas Thakur, he describes in Harinam Chintamani that one should chant softly, like mentally, one should chant audibly, and one should also chant loudly. Why chanting loudly? Because loudly benefits the species, non-human species and all other species, even including human species around us. When you chant in the streets, in the garden, loudly, all the other entities who are lower species, they all get benefited. So this is how they elevate themselves, through the touch of Krishna consciousness in these different ways. 20. Nashike nirabidyatam duyati nabaswati tatra vayur gandhavo vaho grano nasi jigri shata. Thereafter, when the Supreme Purusha desires to smell odor, nostrils and respiration were generated. The nasal instrument, the odor came into existence, and the controlling deity of air carrying the smell also became manifested. The nasal instrument, odor, and the controlling deity, air, smelling, etc., all became manifested simultaneously when the Lord desired to smell. The Vedic mantras confirm this statement in Upanishad statement that everything is first desired by the Supreme before the subordinate living entity can act upon it. The living entity can see only when the Lord sees. The living entity can smell when the Lord smells, and so on. The idea is that the living entity cannot do anything independently. He can simply think of doing something he can only think of doing something independently, but he cannot act independently. This independence in thinking is there by the grace of the Lord, but the thinking can give shape only by the grace of the Lord. And therefore, the common saying is that man proposes, God disposes. The whole explanation is on the subject of the absolute dependence of the living entities and absolute independence of the Supreme Lord. Less intelligent persons claim to be on the equal level with God must first prove themselves to be absolute and independent, and then they must substantiate their claim to be in one with God. So the message that we're getting from this aspect of creation, one verse after another, one aspect of creation after another, the point that Prabhupada is making now in this purport is of the fact that we are totally, completely, absolutely dependent. It is, for many people, a scary thought and something they do not want to accept. We are totally dependent on Krishna. And Krishna is the only independent Swarat living entity. A Bhigna Swarat. He is fully cognizant and is independent. We are totally dependent. When the living entity accepts this and begins to submit himself as dependent on the Lord, he begins to progress in spiritual life. Material world is a very wonderful place to teach us this lesson of dependence. Who can share in what situations this aspect of dependence manifest? In what situation does this dependence manifest? When do we get glimpses of this realization that we are dependent? The air we breathe, the food we eat, most definitely. One day when you start choking and you're suffocating for air, I'm not sure how many of you actually, like for example, let's say you were drowning in a swimming pool and now you're suffocating for air and then you come up. That experience of suffocation gives us a glimpse of how much we're dependent on air. Or try fasting for 3 days without eating food. You will slowly get a realization of how dependent we are on food. When we're in distress, now what type of distress? When there's a hurricane, when there's an earthquake, when there's a tsunami, when there's a drought, then we begin to realize how dependent we are, how powerful creation is, and how helpless we are. And you'll see in these situations, people, it's like, God, help. Because in most cases, it is only God that can help. So these situations and circumstances are directing us to learn that we are dependent. In our life, when things are not going in the right direction, it's a struggle. It's wonderful that we can now speak to Krishna, depend on Krishna, call out to Krishna, pray to Krishna. That my Lord help. So that also is healthy. Because as soon as you think, don't worry, I'm good, man, I'm great, I can do anything. That's when you learn. At every step we're dependent, but we think we're independent. Yes. That's why Prabhupada is using the word here, absolute. You are absolutely dependent. And Krishna is the only person who's absolutely independent. It's absolute. But now this is the foolishness, right? That we are absolutely dependent. And yet we think, I'm okay. I am independent. I got my house. I got my car. I got my family. I am independent. I don't need any money. I can survive. It's like, this is the foolishness. We don't realize Krishna can just switch off the air. He just switch off your heartbeat. It's like we're totally dependent, and yet we think we are in control. We are dependent. It's like we can do things. We don't need God. The pure devotee understands this, and not only understands this, he realizes this fact. That my Lord, I'm fully, totally, completely, absolutely dependent on you. And therefore that submission manifests. So from creation of our tongue, of our nostrils, of our eyes, of every one of our senses, we are getting a message loud and clear that without the presiding deity, without the faculties, without the Virat Rupa, without the Supreme Personality of Godhead, you can do nothing. You can't smell, you can't see, you can't eat, you can't breathe, you can't do anything. And yet you think you are doing everything without God. This is called foolishness. 21. Yadatmani niralokam atmanam cha didrikshata nirbhine yakshini kastasya jyotis chakshur gunagriha. Thus, when everything existed in darkness, the Lord desired to see himself and all that was created. Then the eyes, the illuminating God's Son, the power of vision, and the objects of sight all became manifested. The universe is by nature dense darkness, and therefore the total creation is called tamas, or darkness. The night is the real feature of the universe, for then one cannot see anything, including oneself. The Lord, out of his causeless mercy, first desired to see himself and all the creation as well. And thus the sun became manifested. The power of vision for all living entities became possible. And the objects of vision were all manifested. This means that the whole phenomenal world became visible after the creation of the sun. I think it's in the Bible. The Lord desired, or was it like the Lord spoke and there was creation? The beginning was the word. So this aspect of the Lord desiring, and then there's manifestation. All coming from Krishna. As we hearing these verses, it should change our psyche. There should be a shift. Either an intellectual shift, a shift of realization, a shift of understanding our dependence, and ultimately a shift of affection, of mercy, of love. Whatever the shift is, the direction is very clear. It's connecting us to the Supreme Lord. Without Krishna's mercy, I can't see. Without Krishna's mercy, I can't see, I can't enjoy. Therefore, to the level of my advancement and realization, my next step will be taken. And because we're all on different levels of advancement, when we hear this purport, different effects will be felt by each individual person reading it, according to one's level of advancement. Like a pure devotee, when the pure devotee is reading this, his experience of just this verse is completely in pure devotion, in love. His heart melts with devotion. And different experiences go through his personality because of pure love. So like that, we all will have different shifts in our consciousness. Now, here's the interesting and amazing aspect of the Bhagavatam also. If I keep reading this verse again, so for example, let's say I read it, I contemplate on this verse. Now, I'll give you an example in relation to myself. So, when I read this verse, and this verse is saying it is by Krishna's mercy that I can see, then for me that becomes even more graphical and more critical and important, because yes, I know that it is only by Krishna's mercy that I can see. Why? Because I can only see with one eye. Because my other eye, my left eye, is blind. And it's a long story of how I went to India and I contaminated my eye with some parasites, and they were eating my eye and it detached my retina, and I lost sight of that. And now I can only see with one eye. And the doctor was surprised that the bacteria only impacted the one eye and did not go to the second eye. And the way I take it is, well, Krishna, thank you very much. I lost one eye, but at least I got one more eye to serve you, to see you. In this way, I can engage the one eye in Krishna's service. So, another example, we were in Mayapur, and it was 2003 or around there, I think, the biggest flood that Mayapur had experienced. Overnight, 3 stories underwater. And during that episode, we had to bathe in like bucket water in Ganges. And I was in the bathroom, and we had to use, because there was no electricity, so I had to use candle wax. I had to use candlelight. So in a container, I had had a candle, and I was there in the bathroom. And then I had to now leave, so I had to switch off my candle. And it so happened, I think I came to the room. Yes, I was in the room, and I had to switch off the candle. Now, I can't see, so I hit the candle like this to try to switch off the flame. But what happened? I actually hit the candle, and the candle hit the container, and the containers that had the wax, melted wax, flew into my eye, both eyes, and there I was, closed eyes. The wax practically closed my eyes. And obviously, commotion. Madri was there. We called the doctor. Bhakti Prem Swami, that time, he was Ganganarayan Prabhu. He was a doctor. So Madri finally, because I can't open my eyes are closed, sealed, and I don't know what's going on. And finally, maybe sometime we'll have an episode to share the pastime, but anyway, she eventually got Ganganarayan Prabhu, and he got all my wax out, and I was lucky. I was still able to see. So I realize, yes, it is by Krishna's mercy. I could have lost my eyesight. I can still see. Right? So I lost one eye. I can still see. So yes, thank you very much, Krishna. I can see. By your mercy, I can see. So this way, as we read this verse, again, if we read it, I'm reading it with a different level of consciousness. And if I read it again, my consciousness gets purified, it gets elevated. I read it again, my consciousness gets elevated. So in this way, the Bhagavatam, by constantly associating with it, even though I have read it, but if I read it again, because it created a shift, it's not the same person that's reading it. The impact, the effect will be different because I'm reading it with a change in consciousness, shift in consciousness. And that is why every single verse, every single chapter, every single canto, the whole Bhagavatam will impact my consciousness each time I associate with the Bhagavatam. 22. Bodhyamanasya shibir atmanas taj jikrishata karno chanir vidyatam tisha strotram gunagraha. By development of the desire of the great sages to know, the ears, the power of hearing, the controlling deity of hearing, the object of hearing became manifested. The great sages desire to hear about the self. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita, by advancement of knowledge, one should try to know about the Supreme Lord, the summum bonum of everything. Knowledge does not mean knowledge only of the laws of nature or physics, physical knowledge, which are working by the direction of the Lord. The scientists are eager to hear about the physical laws working in material nature. They are eager to hear through the medium of radio, television about things taking place far away from them on other planets. But they should know that the power of hearing and the instruments for hearing are given to them by the Lord for hearing about the self or about the Lord. Unfortunately, the power of hearing is misused in hearing the vibration of mundane affairs. The great sages were interested in hearing about the Lord through Vedic knowledge and nothing more. This is the beginning of oral reception knowledge. So now our ears to hear, and especially to hear about the Supreme Lord. We need to cultivate the habit of hearing about Krishna. And as we mentioned, 24 hours a day, we want to hear about Krishna. This should be our focus. This should be our objective. This should be our mission in life. That from where I am to where I want to go. Yes, I may not be able to hear about Krishna 24 hours a day. Even if I had the opportunity to hear Krishna 24 hours a day, I wouldn't have the desire to hear Krishna 24 hours a day. My material desires won't allow me. So it's about purification of the material desires to desire to hear, and then to become eligible to hear, and then to have the opulence, the facility of time, let's say time and wealth freedom to do that. So it's a gradual process, but at the same time, I should know the end goal. The end goal is that I want to remember, I want to hear, I want to glorify Krishna always. And then we progress. At least we should not hear things that are completely detrimental or against or displeasing Krishna. That we should definitely avoid. Just like I'm going to work. Now, if I'm in work, let's say if I'm working, say if I'm working in the computer field, right? Or I'm working in a development field. Now we're going to speak about, coding, and we're going to speak about the process, and we're going to speak about what we're coding about. So I'm talking about the application I'm building. Now, that is part of my occupation, which I cannot avoid. So that is okay. But then if I am, let's say, with my friend, and now we go into, talking nonsense and just talking things that have practically no relevance to our life, and, like no real spiritual relevance, then that becomes detrimental to my spiritual progress. 23. Vastuno mriddu katinyam lagu gur voshna sitatam jikrishatas tvam nirbinam tasyam roma mahiruhu tatra chantar bahir vatas tvacha labda guno vritam. When there was a desire to perceive the physical characteristic of matter, such as softness, hardness, warmth, cold, lightness, and heaviness, the background of sensation, the skin pores, the hairs on the body, and the controlling deities, the trees, were generated. Within and outside the skin is a covering of air through which sense perception becomes prominent. The physical characteristic of matter, such as softness, are subjects of sense perception, and thus physical knowledge is the subject matter of touch sensation. One can measure the temperature of matter by touching with the hand, and one can measure the weight of an object by lifting it with the hand. and thus estimate its heaviness or lightness. The skin pores, and the hairs on the body are all interdependent with such touch sensation. The air blowing within and outside the skin is also an object of sense perception. This sense perception is also a source of knowledge, and therefore it is suggested here that physical or physiological knowledge is subordinate to the knowledge of the self, as above mentioned. Knowledge of the self can expand to the knowledge of phenomena, but physical knowledge cannot lead to knowledge of the self. There is, however, an intimate relationship between the hairs on the body and vegetation on the body of the earth. The vegetables are nourishment for the skin, both as food and medicine, as stated in the third canto. Twacham asya vinir binam vishnur vivushur dishyam ashodi. So again, now we're talking about the skin and or sense perception and aspects related to that. And when we experience, gain knowledge through touch, through experience, through physical contact, we can gain knowledge. Prabhupada is making the point that the sense perception is a source of knowledge because I can touch and I can experience and I can gain knowledge through sense perception. But it's subordinate to knowledge of the self. Knowledge of the self can expand to knowledge of phenomena. But physical knowledge cannot lead to knowledge of the self. If I learn about everything material, I cannot get to spiritual. But if I learn about spiritual, I can gain knowledge of matter. Like matter, dead matter cannot realize consciousness, but consciousness can realize dead matter. My clothes cannot realize me, but me, I can realize my clothes. My clothes are not aware of me, but I, the self, is aware of the clothes. So self can know about matter, but matter cannot know about the self. So our awareness, which is the self being aware, is crucial and critical, and therefore the sages are always trying to understand the self, who is the conscious being, a person who's aware, the person who is perceiving. And therefore, that is more important. That is more, that is called advancement of life. When I become more aware of the self than just of matter. You find in the material world, the direction is more materialism, advancement of matter. But spiritual life means advancement of understanding the self. When you understand the self, now you will understand aspects about the self, origin of the self, functions of the self, and then from the self, you're going to understand the supreme self, the supreme person. Where did the self come from? How is it existing? So in this way, it directs you further, or let's say more and more, towards the supreme self, the supreme personality of Godhead. 24. Hasto ruhu tatustasya nana karma chikirshaya tayostu balavan indra adanam ubayashrayam. Thereafter, when the Supreme Person desired to perform varieties of work, 2 hands and the controlling strength, Indra, the demigod in heaven, became manifested as also the X dependent on both hands and the demigods. In every item, we can note with profit that the sense organs of the living entities are never independent at any stage. The Lord is known as the Lord of the senses, Rishikesh. Thus, the sense organs of the living entities are manifested by the will of the Lord, and each organ is controlled by a certain type of demigod. No one, therefore, can claim any proprietorship of the senses. The living entities is controlled by the senses, and the senses are controlled by the demigods, and the demigods are the servants of the Supreme Lord. That is the arrangement in the system of creation. The whole thing is controlled ultimately by the Supreme Lord, and there is no independence of either the material nature or the living entity. The illusioned living entity who claims to be the Lord of his senses is under the clutches of the external energy of the Lord. As long as a living entity continues to be puffed up by his tiny existence, he is to be understood to be under the stringent control of the external energy of the Lord, and there is no question of liberation from the clutches of illusion, Maya, however one may declare himself a liberated soul. Stark reality. If you internally have this pride that I'm independent, I'm in control, I'm the master of my senses, even though you may declare yourself to be liberated, you're not liberated. Because it is only under the illusion, under the control of illusory energy, that somebody thinks they are independent. If we analyze our psyche, we will realize to some degree or other, if we're honest with ourselves, that we have this independent nature. The creation is progressing. Taste, the tongue, the mouth, the tongue, mouth, eyes, ears, hands, legs. And throughout this aspect of creation that we're hearing, this theme will come up again and again. Clearly, I'm not independent. Yet deep within, we have this mentality that I am independent. And people love to be independent. So this is, as Prabhupada was explaining, because we're under the stringent laws of, or stringent control of the external energy Maya, we will think like this. 25. Gatim jigit sata pado ruru hate become pad pyam yagna swayam havyam karma bikriyate nribi. Thereupon, because of his desiring to control movements, his legs became manifested, and from the legs the controlling deity named Vishnu was generated. By his personal supervision, of this act, all varieties of human beings are busily engaged in dutiful occupational sacrifice. Every human being is engaged in his particular occupational duty, and such activities are visible as men go hither and thither. This is very prominently visible in the big cities of the world. People are going all over the cities with great concern from one place to another. This movement is not limited only to the cities, but it is also visible outside the cities from one place to another and from one city to another by different vehicles. Men are moving by cars and trains on surface, by subways within the earth, and by planes in the sky for purpose of business success. In all these movements, the real purpose is to earn wealth for comfortable life. For this comfortable life, the scientist is engaged, the artist is engaged, the engineer is engaged, the technician is engaged, all in different branches of human activity. But they do not know how to make the activity purposeful to fulfill the mission of human life, because they do not know this secret. all the activities are targeted towards the goal of sense gratification without control. And therefore, by all this business, they are unknowingly entering into the deep regions of darkness. Because they have been captivated by the external energy of the Supreme Lord, they have completely forgotten the Supreme Lord Vishnu. And thus, they have taken it for granted that this life, as presently manifested under the conditions of material nature, is all in all for enjoying the highest amount of sense gratification. But such a wrong conception of life cannot give anyone the desired peace of mind. And thus, in spite of all advancement in knowledge, by the use of resources of nature, no one is happy in this material civilization. If we analyze this fact and research this fact, it's absolutely true. Nobody is peaceful. Even the most wealthiest person in the material world is not peaceful. Because there is so many aspects of material nature that creates disturbances. Adibautik, adhyatmic, adidevic suffering, clashes. So nobody is peaceful. It's not meant to be like that, but it is like that. We are hearing directly by Srila Prabhupada. It's because they do not have the secret. They have this video and book. Everybody talks about the secret. The law of attraction. It's the wrong secret. They got the wrong end of the stick. Yeah. Their secret is to attract the wrong thing. It's the wrong secret. Here is Prabhupada talking about the secret. The secret is that at every step, they should try to execute sacrifices towards the path of the world of peace. This is the secret. The secret is that at every step, they should try to execute sacrifices towards the path of the world of peace. So now Prabhupada expands. The Bhagavad Gita 18:45 and 46 also advises the same secret in the following verses. Swe swe karmanya abhirata samsiddhim labate nara swakarma nirata samsiddhim yatha vindati tach shruno yatha pravriti bhutanam yena sarvam idam tatam swakarmanam tam abhyarchya siddhim vindati manava. The Lord said to Arjuna, just hear from me how one can attain the highest perfection in life simply by discharging his specific occupational duty. Man can attain the highest perfection of life by worshipping the Supreme and by performing sacrifice for the sake of the Supreme Lord Vishnu, who is all-pervading and by whose control every living being acquires his desired facilities according to his personal propensity. It's a wonderful verse. There is no harm in having different propensities in life because every human being is proportionately independent to chalk out the plan of his life by different occupations. But one should make it a point in his life to know perfectly well that he is not independent absolutely. So you have a job, you have occupation, you're making money, no problem. Part of life. See, Krishna consciousness is not saying that's Maya. Krishna desired to do things, to act, and legs, hands, etc. activity came into action. But what is the objective of that? And we shouldn't be derailed otherwise. So perform the greatest welfare work, perform sacrifice that's ultimately benefiting the living entities, then our work, our motion has meaning. One is certainly under the control of the Supreme Lord and under different energy agencies. Knowing this, one should make it a point that by his work and the result of his labor, he serves the Supreme Lord as prescribed by the authorities expert in the transcendental loving service of the Supreme Lord Vishnu. So yes, work, engage, make money, survive, but why? So that we can be Krishna conscious, we can serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead under the expert authorities. So in this way, one can live and one can engage in the service of the Lord. And this way, one's life becomes molded, one's life becomes successful. One is achieving the mission of human life, the purpose of human life. For performing such occupational duties of life, the legs is the most important instrument of the body. Because without the help of the legs, one cannot move from one place to another. And therefore, the Lord has special control over legs of all human beings, which are meant for performing yagyas. 26. Nirabidyata Shishno Vai Praja Nandamritart Tina Upasta Ashit Kamanam Priyam Tad Ubayashrayam. Thereupon, for sexual pleasure, begetting offspring, and tasting heavenly nectar, the Lord developed the genitals, and thus there is the genital organ and its controlling deity, the Prajapati. The object for sensual pleasure, the controlling deity are under the control of the genitals of the Lord. The heavenly pleasures for the conditioned soul is sexual pleasure, and this pleasure is tasted by the genitals. The woman is the object of sensual pleasure, and both the sense perceptions of sensual pleasure and the woman are controlled by the Prajapati, who is under the control of the Lord's genitals. The impersonalist must know from this verse that the Lord is not impersonal, for he has his genitals, on which all the pleasurable objects of sex depends. No one would have taken the trouble to maintain children if there was no taste of heavenly nectar by means of sexual intercourse. This material world is created to give the conditioned souls a chance for rejuvenation, going back home, back to Godhead. And therefore, generations of living beings is necessary for upkeep of the purpose of creation. Sexual pleasure is an impetus for such creation, such action, and as such, one can even serve the Lord in the act of sensual pleasure. The service is counted when the children born of such sexual pleasure are properly trained in God consciousness. The whole idea of material creation is to revive the dormant God consciousness of the living entities. So it's interesting, first, the point of sexual pleasure is heavenly pleasure. The Lord has made arrangement that the pleasure that one gets from sexual pleasure is substantial and it's real. It's not something fictitious. And that is what keeps people procreating. Why? Because we need this material world. This creation is a very important part of the correctional institution to rehabilitate the living entity, to bring the living entity's consciousness back to Krishna consciousness. We need this material world. Otherwise, there is no preaching. You can't preach in this material world if this material doesn't exist. So it's a very important ground and facility for helping souls come back to Krishna consciousness. Now, in order to do that, we need this creation For the creation to exist, we need population. For the population to exist, we need people to engage in sexual intercourse to create, to populate. But Prabhupada is making the point, and it's true, that to raise children is not easy. It's a difficult task. It requires a lot. Therefore, the Lord has placed a lot of pleasure in the act of intercourse. Here Prabhupada is equating to say it's heavenly pleasure. It's the highest pleasure that exists. And therefore, the pleasure and then the sacrifice go hand in hand. Prabhupada is also making the point that that can also be engaged. If we engage in making children and raising the children in a God-conscious way, then that becomes a way we can dovetail this propensity. In forms of life other than human forms, sexual pleasure is prominent without any motive of service for the mission of the Lord. But in human form of life, the conditioned soul can render service to the Lord by creating progeny suitable for the attainment of salvation. One can beget hundreds of children and enjoy the celestial pleasure of sexual intercourse, provided he is able to train the children in God consciousness. Otherwise, begetting children on the level of the swine, rather, the swine is more expert than the human being, because the swine can beget a dozen of piglets at a time, whereas human beings can give birth at only one at a time. So one should always remember that the genital sexual pleasure, the woman, the offspring, are all related in the service of the Lord. And one who forgets this relationship in the service of the Supreme Lord becomes subjugated to the threefold miseries of material existence by the laws of nature. Perception of sexual pleasure is there even in the body of a dog, but there is no sense of God consciousness. The human form of life is distinct from that of a dog by the perception of God consciousness. So clearly, all our faculties is meant to awaken God consciousness, to bring us closer to God consciousness, to the awareness of God consciousness. Otherwise, by cultivating animal consciousness, degraded consciousness, this is not the perfection of human form of life. 27. Utshish krikshor datu malam nira vidyata vaigudam tata payustato mitra utsarga ubayashrayam. Thereafter, when he desired to evacuate the refuse of eatables, the evacuating hole, the anus and sensory organs thereof develop along with the controlling deity Mitra. The sensory organs and the evacuating substances are both under the shelter of the controlling deity. Even in the matter of evacuating stool, the refuse is controlled. So how can the living entity claim to be independent? Robert would often make this point. You can't even control your bowels. And you are thinking you are independent. We know the story of how Prabhupada, man was thinking, Prabhupada's challenging, I'm God. He was insisting he's God. And then he wanted to go to the bathroom. Prabhupada said, lock the bathroom. And he's knocking, no, please open, please open. Prabhupada said, you God, you can control your bowels. No, please open. Prabhupada said, first you accept you're not God. Yeah, I'm not God. And then they opened the door. So you have to realize this. I can't even control my bowels. And I'm thinking I'm independent. How ridiculous, how absurd can people be? The only person that is independent is this beautiful baby in front of you. It's Krishna. He's playing his flute. He's totally independent. He can do anything. And he's in control of every facet of creation. Now, it's interesting how Krishna thought of everything. You have to eat something that's whole and then evacuate things that cannot be digested. It all has a purpose. And ultimately, every part of creation is meant to fully realize our relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. 28. Ashre Shrup So Punar Puryan Nabhistwaram Apanata Tatrapanastato Mrityu Prataktuam Ubayashrayam. Thereafter, when he desired to move from one body to another, the navel and the air of departure and death were combinedly created. The navel is the shelter of both, namely death and the separating force. The prana vayu continues the life, and the apana vayu stops the living force. Both the vibration are generated from the abdominal hole, the navel. This navel is the joint from one body to another. But Brahma was born of the abdominal hole of Garbhodaksai Vishnu as a separate body. And the same principle is followed even in birth of any ordinary body. The body of a child develops from the body of the mother. And when the child is separated from the body of the mother, it is separated by cutting the navel joint. And that is the way the Supreme Lord manifested himself. That is the way the Supreme Lord manifested himself as separated many. The living entities are therefore separated parts, and thus they have no independence. So the navel, it's also an interesting organ. Different energy centers are there. Life airs that facilitates. The working of the bodies is remarkable and fascinating. And all this is all coming from Krishna's creation. It's all existing at the time of creation, and there's no evolution. That because one species like they say you have the unicellular amoeba, and over time the need for different senses had to develop, and then they started developing. That is not according to the Bhagavatam. According to the Bhagavatam, all these faculties existed right at the time of creation, and they exist. So we accept the Bhagavatam and not all other speculation. 29. Aditsor anapananam asan kukshanta tranadaya nadya samudrascha toyos tushti pushtis tad ashraya. When there was a desire to have food and drink, the abdomen and the intestines and also the arteries became manifested. The rivers and the seas are source of their sustenance and metabolism. The controlling deities of the intestines are the rivers, and those of the arteries are the seas. Filling the belly with food and drink is the cause of sustenance, and metabolizing the food and drink replenishes the bodily energies. Therefore, the body's health is dependent on the health of actions of the intestines and the arteries. The rivers and the seas, being the controlling deities of the two, keep the intestines and the arteries in healthy order. 13. Nini Dyasor Atmamayam Hridayam Nirabidyata Tato Manas Chandraiti Sankalpa Kamat Evacha. When there was a desire to think about the activities of his own energy, then the heart, the seat of the mind, the moon, the determination, and all desires became manifested. The heart of every living entity is the seat of the Supersoul, Paramatma, a plenary expansion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Without his presence, the living entity cannot get into the working energy according to his past deeds. The living entities are the condition. The living entities are conditioned in the material world, are manifested in the creation in terms of respective inclinations inherent in them, and their requisite material bodies offered to each and every one of them by the material energy under the direct supervision, under the direction of the supersoul. This is explained by Bhagavad Gita 9:10. When therefore the supersoul is situated in the heart of the conditioned soul, the requisite mind is manifested in the conditioned soul, and he becomes conscious of his occupation as one is conscious of his duty after waking up from slumber. Therefore, the material mind of the living entity develops when the supersoul sits on his heart, after which the mind, the controlling deity, the moon, and then the activities of the mind, namely thinking, feeling, and willing, to all takes place. The activities of the mind cannot begin without the manifestation of the heart, and the heart becomes manifested when the Lord wants to see the activities of the material creation. So, all creation, all aspects, all facets, all manifest by the desire of the Supreme Lord. And ultimately, when everything, all the senses are created and they need to now really be full engagement, you need the mind. And because of your past impressions, the mind is very important for you to continue your inclinations. And for that to happen, you need your heart. In the heart, the super soul is seated. So without the super soul, everything cannot come together. And therefore, again and again, this aspect of we are fully dependent. We are fully dependent on the Lord for creating the senses. We are fully dependent on the Lord for creating the deities that control the senses. We are fully controlled and interdependent on all the permutations and combinations of how they work. We are finally totally dependent on the super soul for bringing everything together and allowing us to live in this world, live in this body, and engage in activities. This is all the mercy, the grace of the Supreme Lord, and we are totally dependent. And the Lord is giving us these faculties and facilities so that we can exploit and try to learn our lessons. And ultimately, when we learn the lesson that we are totally dependent on Krishna, our goal is to live in relation, in harmony with the Supreme Lord. Our goal is to sacrifice for the pleasure of the Supreme Lord, for the upliftment of everyone's God consciousness. Then we become proper, ideal instruments in the hand of the fully independent Supreme Personality of Godhead. Vantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Nitai Go Pramanande, Hari Hari. Are there any questions, comments? And this is why a pure devotee is never in anxiety, because he fully understands that everything is under the control of the Supreme Lord. And because everything is dependent on Krishna, nothing outside Krishna's desire, Krishna's control can manifest. And the pure devotee is completely subservient, completely submissive to the will of Krishna. And through that will, he allows himself to be malleable, to be molded and to be used. As Prabhupada says, make me a puppet, make me dance. I'm a puppet in your hands, make me dance, make me dance. So the Lord uses the pure devotee that has that attitude, that has that consciousness. And this way, the pure devotee understands that whatever is achieved is simply a manifestation of Krishna's control, Krishna's grace, Krishna's mercy. And we need to cultivate that consciousness slowly but surely over time. It's not an overnight journey because of our condition. conditioning. But slowly we need to contemplate, we need to associate with these topics and gain realization more and more, slowly but surely. And in this way, our life will be the mission of our life will be fulfilled. Mother Les says, Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you for the Krishna Katha, very interesting class. The living entity has minute independence, ability to choose. Is this a correct statement? Where does this reside? Yes. So it's interesting, right? Throughout the whole section, the point is clear. You have no independence. You are totally dependent. But you'll find it also mentions the living entity has minute independence. What is that minute independence? That minute independence is, as you mentioned, the ability to choose. That choice, that ability to choose, your choices that you make, you the only one that make the choices. That's the only independence the Lord has given you. The independence to always choose. Otherwise, everything else, once you make the choice, you are totally dependent on all the arrangements and the controlling deities and the manifestation. But the choice is you. That's why you can't blame Krishna. Oh, Krishna, I'm suffering because of you, because I'm totally dependent. No. Wait. You made the choice to be where you are. Right? That's why they say you can change destiny. Why you can change destiny? Not because you can control the sky and the earth and the movements and, no, you can't control matter. But what you can control, what you can change is your thinking, your choice, what you choose, the choices you make. So because you can make the choices, you can choose, now you can change destiny. How will you know what to choose? You need to sharpen your intelligence with Prabhupada's Bhaktivedanta purpose. Then you'll know what choices you need to make. So yes, that Prabhupada says, because Krishna is independent, he's also given you that minute independence. Like the ocean is salty, but there's also salt in the drop of water from the ocean. So similarly, we have that minute independence. Where does that reside? That resides in the ability to choose, the ability of discrimination, the ability of the intelligence. So it's like in the awareness. The living entity has the desire. You could say it's in you, because the living entity is conscious, the living entity can desire. So therefore that desire to choose, that consciousness to choose is within you. Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank Shamanan Process. Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you very much, Prabhu. Amazing verse, Prabhu. What is the most amazing is all the info Srila Prabhupada is elaborating on. One can only speak on these topics if one is versed and realize in all these. So Srila Prabhupada knew so much, and then on top of that, was able to put these down in print for a layman to grasp and understand. Yes. That's why Srila Prabhupada, he's not writing like an intellectual, or even like a philosopher, or even like a scholar. Or you could even say like a saintly person. No, Prabhupada is writing from complete realization from the spiritual platform. And he's writing so that we could link and connect to that platform. So Prabhupada's expertise of bringing let's say, the absolute truth, Krishna, down to the mundane platform, so that people on the mundane platform can be educated and can realize the truth and can transcend matter to then go back. This was Prabhupada's expertise. Naturally, he put the effort, and Krishna empowered him, gave him the ability, and Prabhupada took full advantage of that service. So, yes, Prabhupada's books, they will continue to be mystical and magical in transforming people's lives. And there'll be great souls like yourself that will have the ability, or let's say the glorious service of touching souls with Prabhupada's books. Hemavati Nalikanda says, thank you, Prabhu and Mother Madhuri, for the Srimad Bhagavatam classes. We need teachers to realize this. We need teachers to realize this transcendental subject matter. Shri Krishna is most kind ever. He gives us so much, so much, and we think we're independent. We have nothing without his mercy, absolutely nothing. Yes, give me one thing that you created. Nonsense, corruption, and it's like we didn't create anything of great value, totally outside Krishna's mercy, blessings. Prabhupada gives the example, somebody wealthy, he buys all the material, the wood, the glue, the nails, the instruments, the tools, and then he gives it to the carpenter and he says, please make me a cabinet. Now the carpenter makes the cabinet, and then he says, my cabinet. No way, how can this be your cabinet? Right? Is all my tools, all my resources, you just gave, it was your creativity that you made it, but your creativity does not give you ownership of the cabinet. So yes, we applied some creativity, and even that creativity, Krishna says, I'm the ability in man. Where did it come from? It came from Krishna's inspiration. So yeah, it's amazing how we really don't have anything of value to offer. And yet we think, here we are, the greatest thing in creation. And I'm able to present and create the greatest thing in creation. That's why Prabhupada says, anyone who thinks like that is under stringent control of Maya. Hearing all this makes us grateful and realize who we really are, so insignificant. There is no need to think we are great. We must be grateful, and this can help us be grateful, help us develop a grateful heart. Yes, we are not great. We simply have to be grateful. Wonderful points for us to really contemplate on these matters. Thank you very much. A humbling class indeed. Yes. And by Prabhupada's mercy, we have such a valuable opportunity of becoming great simply by understanding that we are totally insignificant, and yet we are able to offer the greatest welfare work and do the greatest service and benefit the living entities in the greatest way. What an amazing paradox. All by the most glorious, supreme personality of Godhead, Krishna. Thank you very much. We'll continue next week. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Nitai Go Pramanande, Hari Hari.